Good evening. I'll bring this regular city council meeting to order. If we could please rise for the invocation by Father Dave Newhart from St. Elizabeth's Episcopal.
Let us pray. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe. We give you thanks, God, because you have given us the right and the privilege to serve you and to serve our community. We ask, Lord, that you would bless our council, bless our city, and bless the people in this city. We ask, Lord, that you would give us wisdom in how to best serve our community. And so, Lord, we lift these things and we bring them to you in the precious name of your Son, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mayor McPartlin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Coy.
Here.
Councilmember Dodd.
Here.
Councilmember Hill.
Here.
Councilmember Kitchen.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, leads us up to agenda modifications. Council, I just want to pull item D from the consent agenda.
And I'd like to pull item F.
C, D, and F.
B, C, F, okay.
C, D, F.
I'd like to move approval of items A.
Well, we got to do proclamations first.
No, well, we have to say it's okay.
Okay.
Oh, you're right.
All right.
You're right. Sorry.
We're going to do the proclamation.
Can we clarify that, Mr. Mayor, on your way down there? Because we seem to have changed that. I didn't know that that was a modification. We used to do it under consent agenda. When we got to the consent agenda, before we approved it, we'd say, I'd like to remove. That's
Right. That's typically how it's been done. I don't know that there's a problem either way, but
Doesn't make any difference to me.
suppose that's up to the mayor, as far as I'm concerned.
That's it. Spank me now, spank me later. Do it.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. You got Valerie Powell from the Early Learning Coalition. So you got to come in person because it's more lively here.
Absolutely.
How are you? Hi, Julie Perry. All right, this is a proclamation recognizing the City of Sebastian second annual Storybook Forest, which will be February 11th. Whereas the second annual Storybook Forest will take place in Riverview Park on February 11th, bringing together early childhood educators, local agencies, and businesses to share with children and families a new way to promote early literacy. And whereas the purpose of Storybook Forest is to create a magical storybook land where children can experience their favorite storybooks in a whole new way, through interactive play, music, and crafts. And whereas research indicates that children who are exposed to reading at an early age acquire 30 million more vocabulary words than those not exposed to reading. And whereas in recognition of the importance of early literacy, this free event is being hosted by the Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee counties. Now, therefore, I, Bob McPartlin, Mayor of the City of Sebastian, do hereby proclaim the importance of literacy for the children in our community and encourage families to take part in the Storybook Forest on February 11th.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the Early Learning Coalition, I would like to thank you and our community for supporting this event. It's and giving the public the awareness of the importance of early literacy and early learning in our community.
My name is Julie Perry, owner and director of TLC Preschool, adjunct professor at Indian River State College. This is National Literacy Month, so we're following up at the end of that, so we encourage you to be a part of that and to keep reading to your family members.
Excellent, thank you. And Father Dave. So you come do the invocation, we give you a proclamation. Father Davis here, accepting this proclamation recognizing the 4 chaplains, all of different faiths, who saved the lives of others knowing that they would be sacrificing their own. Whereas the U.S. Army transport Dorchester was sunk by enemy action off the coast of Greenland on February 3, 1943, with a loss of 672 lives, and whereas 4 Army chaplains of different religious faiths, George Fox of Gilman, Vermont, Methodist, Alexander Good of York, Pennsylvania, Jewish, Clark Poling of Schenectady, New York, Reformed Church in America, and John Washington of Newark, New Jersey, Roman Catholic, lost their lives in the sinking of this vessel while heroically saving their comrades, and whereas each of these men were awarded posthumously the Distinguished Service Cross in December 1944 for services rendered to their country above and beyond his duty, and whereas their inspiring deed is documented and honored today by the City of Sebastian's 4 Chaplains Monument, its veterans organizations, and the Chapel of 4 Chaplains in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and whereas the conduct of these heroic chaplains and other brave men who died on the Dorchester will forever be an inspiring example of courageous and unselfish devotion to God and to country and interfaith cooperation. Now, therefore, I, Bob McParland, Mayor of the City of Sebastian, do hereby proclaim the month of February as a period of interfaith in action dedicated to the memories of the heroic and unselfish conduct by the 4 immortal chaplains, George Fox, Alexander Good, Clark Poling, and John Washington.
As a member of the Armed Forces and a veteran, and as Mayor McPartland as a veteran, these men sacrificed their lives. They knew that they would give up their lives for those. They offered their life vests. They offered everything that they had, and they held hands together. Where sometimes our country is divided, they became united, and they served their country well. They knew that they would not have life vests to save them from the rigid waters, but they knew that they could save 4 other lives by giving up their life vests. It is an honor and a privilege. I attended Ernie Heaton's memorial. He was one of the last survivors of the Dorchester. And it was a privilege and an honor to be at his memorial and to serve at his memorial. So today, if you take the time, go down to the Veterans Park, take a look at the monument, and read about the Dorchester, and read about the lives that they saved and how they gave their life for others. Thank you.
All right, that leads us into brief announcements. On January 27th, the Chamber Concert in Riverview Park will be continuing with Crooked Creek playing from 5:30 to 8 p.m. On February 4th, the Craft Club show in Riverview Park will take place from 10 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. And also on February 4th, the Indian River County Historical Society's Mullet Fry at the Working Front will take place from 12 to 2 p.m. Any other council announcements?
Just to tag on to your last proclamation, this is early notice that the 4 Chaplains ceremony will be held in Riverview Park on February 11th. That's Saturday, February 11th at 2 p.m. We'll have another council meeting before that, but since we just had the proclamation, please come down. It's a wonderful ceremony. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, that leads us to the consent agenda. I guess items C, D, and F have been pulled. Any other comments, questions, or pulling?
Yes, I got it. Request approval of A, D, E, and
No,
G.
I pulled D. I pulled D. So C,
I'm sorry,
D, and F have been pulled.
You know, I don't have my hearing aids in tonight, so it's going to be a rocky road. Okay, so move approval of A, B, E, and G.
Second. Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Vice Mayor Coy,
Yes.
Mr. Dodd,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Kitchen,
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, it leads us up to item C. Ms. Kinchin, you pulled this one?
No, I
Or you
pulled
pulled
C.
it? I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
Dodd, you pulled item C?
And I apologize for doing that early. I have the same hearing aid problem that you do. I was
I forgot
changing.
mine tonight. It's going to be tough.
Well, get one of these, they work great. Okay, I pulled item C because I'd like to add a couple of items to the budget sequence of events. And I'll explain why I'm interested in doing that. I think that in the past, the city council has seen a lot of things in the budget cycle towards the end of the cycle, and they haven't really conveyed maybe to the budget committee and staff objectives or guidelines that they'd like followed. A good example of that is to specifically delineate that the council is interested in the budget being prepared following the fallback millage rate as opposed to additional. It seems like we get to the end of the budget cycle every year and then have to discuss whether we're going to increase the millage rate or not increase the millage rate. So what I would like to add is a date of February the 8th at the council meeting for us to finalize a set of objectives. I've got some examples of things that I would like to see in that. One would be that the ad valorem tax rate be kept at the existing 2016-17 level. Not saying that they have to do that, but saying that that's an objective of the council to try to prepare a budget that meets that goal as opposed to waiting until the end of the budget cycle and then having to discuss that. They may not be able to. They may come back and give us justification why they can't, but at least it's a direction coming from council. I think also that we should consider the possibility that for the early retirement program, I remember last year during the discussion about trying to repay all that money in the budget, it was going to cause us to have to increase taxes. That's the kind of a business decision that sometimes just doesn't work out the way you think it should work out, and if it doesn't, you have to change your process. I think we should include in our objectives a direction to the city manager that he repay the remaining of that to the reserve account over the next 5 years as opposed to in the 17-18 budget cycle. That'll leave him some additional funds in there to possibly do some hiring. There's a couple of areas where he has some staff issues, but he doesn't really have the budget dollars to deal with that. It's not gigantic. In my conversations with him, he's been very forthright with some of the areas. One of those is in the growth management department, and I think we need to consider the possibility of having someone in there that can do some growth management things. It's going to cost some money to do it, but I think it's an important position to go with. I don't know. There may be many others. The 5-year capital improvement plan is one that I'm interested in us looking at also. So I'd like for us also to take a look at the things that are in the 16-17 capital improvement plan that are being funded in 17-18, and maybe have council members prioritize those items at the beginning of the budget cycle as opposed to the end. Provide some insight as to whether they're a high priority or a low priority, maybe just as simple as that. So as the staff is going through the budget process, they can see the things that the council as a group may feel are not as high a priority, and if they have to pull something to stay within the income parameters, that's an item they can consider pulling, as opposed to trying to figure out where the council comes from that. It's the kind of direction that, in my past experience, that a board of directors would give to a CEO at the beginning of a budget cycle, and I think it would be very beneficial for the city manager if we could do that to him. It will help him try to alleviate the possibility that he comes back with one thing that he thinks the council wants, and it turns out like the repayment of the early retirement funds as not being exactly what the council thought they were going to get out of that. So I think it's important to do that. So I'd like to add those 2 items to our next meeting so we can prepare that. I think we should be able to finalize it during that meeting and provide it to the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, if I could?
Yes.
I would agree with absolutely everything you just said, except for the millage rate staying the same. That's the only thing I would concern myself in. Typically, in economic times like today, a millage rate staying the same is a tax increase. So I would suggest that we start the process out with the goal of rollback rate, which would be no tax increase. So I know we'll discuss that at the next council meeting, hopefully, if this passes with your amendments, which I would agree with. But I think that's where we need to make sure that we're trying to get to.
Yeah, and I may not have said that correctly. I agree with the rollback rate. That's what I intended to say, is that we start, and the one thing about rollback is rollback includes not only keeping the tax collected from existing homeowners the same, but it also includes additional funds that may come in from new properties and so forth. So even at rollback, there's still some additional funding that takes place, but current homeowners don't pay more taxes, which is, I think, exactly what we need to do, is to stay at the rollback rate. It's a great guideline, I think, coming up front. It provides some direction for them.
Mr. Mayor? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I'm concerned about discussion of the millage and giving instructions and so forth. I don't have any problem with anything else you said, but the millage concerns me, and I say that because state law provides a very specific process for the determination of the millage down the road. It requires advertising, it requires public hearings, it requires consideration of a variety of budgetary issues before you even get to the millage. And without any of those having taken place, which they can't really until the fall, you're not in a position to deal with the millage. And so I have a concern with that aspect of your request or of your amendment. I think to keep us within the statutory framework, we can deal with all the budget issues you want in advance, but the millage itself, I prefer not to address until the fall.
Okay. Would it possibly be appropriate to then, as a working assumption, say that the budget would be prepared based on ad valorem tax revenue being equal to the 16-17 revenue stream?
Well, I think you can say a number of things like that as long as you don't talk about the millage rate.
Yeah, I'm saying, forget the millage rate, just say basically prepare it with the income stream for ad valorem taxes being equal to 16-17 income stream.
I don't have a problem. I like the idea of giving direction, but I also know that we have a budget committee, and I think they should be invited here to give feedback, or perhaps have time to look at our, yeah, I mean, we can be authoritarian, but it doesn't bode well when you have a committee that works very, very hard. I would like to invite them in the process and at least have them come and have a discussion with us on how they think that will work. At the end of the day, yes, it's our decision, but we do have the committee. They're citizens that work very, very hard. And Mr. Dodd, you just left the P&Z. You know, you've worked hard on these committees. You know, we always included P&Z when there were changes. Send this back. I think we should include them in the process before we give direction, just to get their consensus too, or have them understand what we're trying to do. If we have to put our foot down, fine, so be it. But let's include them.
All right, so we'll have a discussion next
Yeah,
meeting
yeah.
on priorities?
I can sympathize with that, but I think that the council needs to provide the direction, and the budget committee and the staff can then, that's a framework that they can deal within when it comes to that direction. If we are going to get into a big debate with everybody about whether it's right to do it, we'll be at the end of the budget cycle before we decide whether it's right to do it. And so sometimes I think that it's just time to, for us to say as a council, we agree that these things should be done. We want the income stream to be equivalent to what it was last year, and we want to provide the city manager an opportunity to hire some staff if he can come to do that. And I sympathize with the relationship, as I know on the Plain Zoning Council several times there was, I felt like that the P&Z was probably after the fact on some decisions, and I sympathize that with the Budget Committee, but basically what we'd be doing is providing a working document for them to do their committee work on under the guidelines of that. It doesn't say they can't come back later and say, no, we can't do that.
Then I'd like to see the entire working document. We've already approved the budget. This is not just something that we're going to decide at one meeting. We hash things out. You know, I see where you're trying to go here. It's just, what happens if we have emergencies and all of that? Of course, there's stuff that's going to come up. I know Mr. Hill has always wanted to have definitive items too, and roll back. Sometimes that's not possible. I'd love to set the goal to roll back. We can't set the millage rate now by law. So, you know, if you want to set the direction and make council the only people involved in this, then maybe we don't need the budget review committee.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, and this is not atypical, the way that corporations work. And I know, right off the bat, I'll say this unequivocally, you cannot run a municipality the way you run a company. But you can also run a municipality under standard planning and control practices that corporations use. And it's not atypical for a corporation through its board of directors at the beginning of the budget cycle to outlay some working parameters that they want the group of people that do the budget, which is their budget committee, to follow or to try to work within. And it's also not atypical for that group of people to come back to that board at some point in time and say, we can't live within that. We need to do this or this or this, and it's going to cost less money or more money or whatever. The entire process that's followed by the city is very sound. The reason I didn't bring this up a month ago when I wanted to was that I've spent that time since I'm new. I've spent that time trying to get a good feel for the budget process, and quite frankly, the meetings I've had with the city manager and city financial officer is very sound what they do. They know what they're doing. So I'm not questioning that at all. I'm just saying that the council can provide some direction to the parties that are involved in budgeting. And I think one of those is an income. They basically should provide some direction on where they think the income is going to be, which is a standard budgeting practice. You start with income, then you spend the money that you've got, as opposed to starting with expenses and then figure out where to get the money to go the other way. And also, as far as the staffing's concerned, if there is a budget issue with staffing because of the way we do budgeting, sometimes the capital improvement, which is that's really our discretionary spending. The general fund spending is not discretionary. That's the fixed. If I was running a plant, that's what I'd have to spend to keep the plant operational. The capital improvement plan is really our discretionary spending. So if, in fact, there are items on that capital improvement plan that the members of the council feel like are a lower priority, if the people doing the budgeting know that, then they can use that as an input to their budgeting process. There's not a whole lot on there, and looking back at the capital improvement plan, there's only 5 or 6 items that have money in next year but don't have money in this year, so there's not a ton there. But there are items that are currently being worked on or being viewed by the city that are not in the capital improvement plan, so we need to make sure all that stuff gets rolled in. To me, it's a council decision. It's not something that belongs within or that has to be expanded beyond that. And sometimes I think you just have to do things as opposed to try to, the municipalities and governments tend to want to make everything stretch out over long periods of time, and sometimes I think the simplest thing to do is just do it. So and I would move that on item C that we include in the February 8th council meeting, we include 2 dates on the budget committee or the budget process for February 8th. The first one is to finalize council objectives for the budgeting process. The second one is for council to review and identify any items on the capital improvement plan with 17-18 funds that they don't feel are a high priority.
Second.
All right. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Any further council discussion? Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. That leads us up to item 7D. This is approving a donation to the Executive Roundtable of Indian River County by the Sebastian Police Department from their forfeiture fund. I just want to let you know I have to abstain from this vote because I serve on that committee in my role with the Department of Children and Families, and I'm also the vice chairman, so.
Move approval of item D.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Any further discussion? Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Abstaining.
Abstain. Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. This brings us up to item 7F, approve the purchase of 145 Windows Enterprise licenses from SHI International Corp. Ms. Kinchin, do you pull this
I
item?
just have one question for staff. Do we have 145 active computers, or are you buying extra for spares?
This is Rob Messersmith from our MIS department. He can answer that.
We currently have 145 computers. They're not all active. Currently, last count was 139. We're getting ready to push some more into service, so we'll get to that 145 mark pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. I move to approve item F.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Any further discussion? Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, leads us up to committee reports. Anyone have anything to report from any committees?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Last Tuesday, we had the Indian River Lagoon Coalition meeting here. That's Fellsmere, Sebastian, and Vero Beach. What was interesting is that both Fellsmere and Vero Beach decided to go ahead and approve, and they kind of followed the line that I was taking, and our council here followed the line that they were taking. So it was I followed your decisions and declined the amendments on behalf of our council. Since that time, new amendments have arrived. Ta-da! They changed the change. So this has been given to Mr. Ginsburg because there is an interlocal agreement, and there is some action required by us. If we decline the amendments, then I'm going to leave it up to the lawyers to discuss it between themselves, but then it looks like we're going to have to withdraw totally from the interlocal agreement. But we'll let those guys decide. So where we are right now, we're in limbo again. I honored your decision, voted no, but it's back with the new amendments, and hopefully next week or next meeting, we will have something to look at again. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else have any committee reports?
No.
All right. Leads us up to item 9. We have a quasi-judicial public hearing. I'll open the hearing for this. Mr. Ginsburg.
Yes, sir. This is the consideration of resolution number R-1701, preliminary plat for commercial subdivision known as Jackson Street Corners.
All right.
And the title is a resolution of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, approving the preliminary plat for a subdivision known as Jackson Street Corners, providing for conflicts herewith, providing for an effective date. That's 9A on your agenda.
All right, thank you, sir. Any council members need to disclose any ex parte communication?
No.
No? All right. Ms. Williams, will you swear in anyone who's going to provide testimony in this, including staff?
Those who are going to provide testimony, would you stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representation which you are about to give or present during this public hearing will be truthful and accurate? Thank you.
Is the applicant or their agent here to make a presentation? Yes, sir. If you just state your name and where you live for the record, please.
My name is Steve Neveloff, and I represent the parties that own all the parcels in the plat. I live in Lake Mary, Florida.
All right. Anything else?
No, sir, I would ask that y'all approve this. We've been through site plan approval, have our site plan approved. Our buildings are in the building department for approval, and we've received a early clear permit, which is why we're out there clearing the land already. Have received all of our environmental permits, taking care of all those issues as well. And the sooner we can get this approved, the sooner you'll have some additional revenue for your budget discussions with some new buildings that are up. Thank you.
All right,
I'll
thank
be
you,
happy to
sir.
answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Bosworth, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, this is a request for a preliminary plat. This is a actual replat of a portion of Ocean Breeze Heights, which was a subdivision platted in 1925. Over the years, you have had applications to abandon some of the streets come before you. The original subdivision was actually split in half with the development of US 1. Mr. Nefelef and his companies and corporations over the last couple of years have bought the property and acquired some additional, if you remember, there was some derelict mobile home properties behind 1701. He has come before us now to, and those 5 lots, the properties that he owns is shown on the first page of the preliminary plat. He has come before us now to subdivide this into a 3-lot commercial subdivision. The staff report was included in your packet. That staff report pretty much itemizes all of the items that are in the land development code that we check to see that a preliminary plat meets, that they're in compliance with. I'm certainly not going to go over every page in the staff report, but I wanted to point out a few things that, as staff, that we check when these lots, the proposed lots are shown. We'll make sure, and what is maybe I don't want to say unique, but unlike some of our other commercial subdivisions, this is not going to have a master stormwater plan. There's not a master street plan. It's each individual lot. It's 3 lots. They'll come in per a site plan is when we'll review for issues like access, traffic, and stormwater. But there were a few things. We want to make sure that the lots that, as they're proposed, do have street access, which all 3 of these lots do. We'll verify that these lots are all within the urban service boundary for water and sewer so that they can receive utilities. We have, again, looked to make sure, well, the stormwater plan will come on each individual lot. But we will, I want to go into that in just a second here. The main part for us on this subdivision was, yes, there's a lot of environmental issues on the overall property. The property that you see cleared did have, we did have a thorough environmental study for that property. Proposed lot 2 and 3, which are along the railroad, do have some wetland issues, and there are some scrub jays they're within a radius of some scrub jay habitat. So this was all reviewed during our site plan review of lot 1. But those environmental issues have been taken care of. They required some mitigation with the scrub jay issue. They have, through their mitigation permit, they were required to come up with a habitat conservation plan and make a contribution to the Nature Conservatory. That has been done and all taken care of as part of both the preliminary plat and the site plan. We had hoped that a final plat would come with you at the same time tonight. We're still working on that plat. It should probably be here at the 8th, February 8th. That being said, when the site plan, the application has been in our office for a while, and we tried to get this all at the same time. In an effort to save the developer some time, we did take the site plan before the Planning and Zoning Commission at the same time that they reviewed the plat. They approved the site plan with some conditions, one of them being that no building permit can be issued before the plat is recorded, the final plat. That being said, though, because the environmental issues were taken care of and the site plan had been approved, staff was comfortable giving them a land clearing permit at their own risk to begin some of their site work, the land clearing and the trenches and pipes for their stormwater, for clearing some of their grading. They won't be able to do anything with the buildings until this plat is approved by you possibly tonight and the final plat. Because we have reviewed the site plan, we're aware of the design for the stormwater maintenance, stormwater system. The outfall of some of that water is going to go on to Lot 2. And that is the purpose of our condition, is that we wanted to have something in writing either on the plat or in the deed restriction that that is okay for the outfall of the water from Lot 1 to go on Lot 2. And we are working with them on some easement and covenant documents that will be presented to you with the final plat when they're all finalized. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat with that condition. This was the same condition that Planning and Zoning made their recommendation to approve the preliminary plat, that a statement addressing the maintenance of the individual stormwater systems and outfall onto the adjacent property shall be included in the subdivision's covenant and deed restrictions, which is required with final platting.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Council, you have any questions for the applicant or for staff?
Yeah, I've got
Yes,
a couple.
Mr. Dunn.
The ingress egress to Lot 2, is that going to be off Jackson Street? It looks like we're right across from where the Walmart turn is.
It could be, I think it's going to be, certainly this could be answered from the developer, but there are a lot of environmental issues that would remain on Lot 2. Even with some mitigation in the wetlands, I don't think there's a large developable area on Lot 2. It could actually maybe become a mitigation bank for some environmental issues. I don't see, but yes, it would come off of that, and at that time of site plan, we would address traffic concerns, ingress, egress. But I think of the 3 lots, that would be the last one to get developed because of the environmental issues on it.
Is Palm Avenue still active?
Yes,
Okay, so that even though Jackson Street's
that
been...
did come before City Council the previous year. That portion was denied to be abandoned. It
Okay,
is 40
all right.
feet, 40-foot wide, but we felt we may need it for drainage issues, or it was just a right-of-way that at that time was not abandoned.
Okay, and so you're comfortable that when Lot 2 comes in with a site plan that we'll have enough information to make sure that they don't build something and mess the water flow up?
Yes, it's actually, if you look on page 3 of the plat, I believe, it's actually Lot 3 off of Davis Street that also has some developable area. Either one of those, we'll certainly look at it as a site-specific
Okay.
review.
All right, thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any questions?
No.
All right, at this time, I'll open the floor for anyone in favor of the request. All right, seeing none, at this time, I'll open the floor for anyone opposing the request. All right, Mr. Neverlev, anything you want to add to the presentation?
No, sir. I believe it's all said. Thank you.
Anything else you want to summarize, Ms. Bosworth? Or?
I just will reiterate that the Planning and Zoning Commission did review this plat at their December 15th, 2016 meeting, and by a vote of 7-0, they recommended approval of Jackson Street with the condition as outlined in our resolution.
All right, council, any further questions? Call for a motion?
All right,
Like
I
to
move
move-
we approve the preliminary plat for commercial subdivision known as Jackson Street Corners as submitted.
Second.
All right. Any further council discussion? Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd? Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Brings us up to item 10, unfinished business. Item 10A, consider the Sebastian Train Depot relocation appropriation. Mr. Griffin?
Yes, sir. After the last meeting, I was given instructions to investigate the Sebastian Train Depot that is currently located in Fort Pierce. On Monday after that meeting, I sent our building official down there, take a look at the building, take pictures. Those pictures are included in your packet with the exception of the first 2. Those 2 are pictures that Ms. Williams supplied out of our historical documents about when the train depot was in Sebastian. I contacted the folks who now are the owners of that building and asked them what the status is. The update that I got from them was that the property that the building is currently on now belongs to the city of Fort Pierce. City of Fort Pierce is selling that property, and they are requiring that this building be moved by January 31st. I contacted the individual who moved that building from the Fine Spoils area across from Whispering Pines. That used to be a grove, and the building was located there, and in 2010, a company by the name of Youngblood and Sons Building Movers of Sanford moved that building down to its location in Fort Pierce. In talking to Mr. Youngblood, he agreed to go down and take a look at the building and also to take a look at the route. He got back to me. His estimate to me to move that building would be $45,000. Pardon me. That doesn't include permitting and cost of permits For example, City of Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County, City of Vero Beach Electric, also Florida Power and Light, things like that. So, but he would be able to go through that permit process. City of Sebastian would be responsible for how much those permits cost. And overtime for folks, for example, Florida Power and Light, if they had to get folks out there when the building was moved. So what I offered in my agenda transmittal were two scenarios to council. And assuming that the building was moved here for $45,000 or $55,000 or thereabouts, where could we place the building and what could we use it for? I brought forth a scenario of a static display. For example, if we brought it somewhere in our CRA district and planted it there, and then go into a refurbishing type of scenario, our building official estimates that if it was reconfigured as just a static display, it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 to refurbish. If we wanted to use it as a museum where we could have visitors go through the museum, et cetera, the price goes up a little bit exponentially there because you've got to provide for code issues, ADA access, things like this. And he is estimating somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000. So wrapping it up, probably somewhere in the $120,000 to $165,000, $170,000 range to get the building moved here and to put it in some sort of condition, either static display or useful for visitors. Subsequent to the agenda being printed, I ran across some materials. There's one that, and I distributed these to members of council, and it shows what the town of Jupiter did a few years ago in a similar building. This building was the size of our building, but during the 1949 hurricane was about cut in half, and they had that building and they moved it about a mile or so and refurbished it, did quite a nice job. I talked to the individual who's down at the Town of Jupiter Planning Department, and that's an email in that packet, and you can see what his estimates are on well, not his estimates, what they spent down in Jupiter to refurbish that building. Most notable is they have a historical society down there called the Loxahatchee Guild, and Mr. Kemp, who's from town of Jupiter, he thinks that those funds were around, that they raised around $155,000 that they used for materials only, to refurbish the building. And you can see what the other costs that they had, $150,000 to move it, but apparently they had some archaeological testing that they had to do and things like that. And they have added this to their CIP funding, actually year over year down in the town of Jupiter. Today, the Mayor McPartland, was in Fort Pierce and went by the building, took some pictures. That's also in your packet, in the back of that packet that I handed out to council today. So that's pretty much my report, and I'll stand by waiting for council's direction.
All right, well, Joe, I'll tell you, maybe Rob left, we need a better printer, because the pictures that I took and I printed them out, they came out a lot more vivid than what you had, if you guys want to take a look at those. But I looked at the building, and, I mean, I just don't see that there could be more than 5% of that would be left as part of the thing. As the only thing I see that could be potentially saved off of the building would be the doors that are on there. And then the thing is, I discussed with Joe, and I guess I didn't discuss this with you, Mr. Ginsburg, is if you go down and pull the doors off of there, then do you consider control of the whole property to have to get rid of that for them? Because I was looking
so
for
if
a
we take-
sign that said Sebastian on it, because I would have pried that off with my crowbar and would have ran fast enough to leave town. But I mean, the thing was, I mean, there was a lot of, in the pictures that I have, you can see that, I mean, there's termite damage all over the place. The roof is completely gone. There is no flooring in there right now, but the beams for the flooring are all completely damaged. And I don't even know that back street that I went down, because there's all construction, how they could put that on a thing and get it out of there. And again, looking at the cost of $50,000 plus to move this, I would think if and I want to save history as much as anybody else, but I think if the Historical Society went down there to whoever owns that building right now, because I think only the doors could be saved off of there, and then ultimately down the road, we could look at refabbing something based on the original doors of the property. So there's no way I can support paying $50,000 to relocate the train depot to here.
Maybe I misunderstood what you said. Would we be allowed to go down? I know there's a deadline, like the 31st of this month is the drop deadline. And that's really, I mean, that's next week. So it's getting tougher and tougher to try and save something. But would we be allowed to go down there and rip up some of that building, like get that door, maybe take some of the boards? You know, some of our crew, our staff, love demo operations. They love to rip stuff apart. And
Well, you know, you look at the thing is the legality. Somebody owns that building right now.
Yeah.
It's like if you wrecked your car and you collected the insurance for that car and you had the check and you had left something in the car, you couldn't go back to the car to retain that.
Right.
So if we go down and take a door off, then they say, well, you got to get rid of the rest
that's
of the
what
building.
I thought you said.
Right. So I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Ginsburg. And again, I wouldn't want to see the city involved in doing it. I would say if the Historical Society went to the owner and said, look, these are historical items, we would like to get them, and if you could donate them.
There are two things. There are certain things you don't want to ask your lawyer.
That's why I didn't ask you if there was a sign saying Sebastian. That would have already been in my car.
See, there you go. The proper way to do it is for, I don't care whether it's the Historical Society or the city or anyone else, contact the owner and see if you can retrieve those, if they will permit it. And we have till next Tuesday, apparently, to act.
To get written permission?
Well, I don't care whether it's written or oral, but at least have some kind of permission from an owner that you can take these. If it's to me, it seems like if it's going to be destroyed anyway on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, they would let you do that.
If I could, Mr. Mayor?
But no,
Yes.
to go down there in the dead of night
Yes,
wouldn't be my recommendation.
I would just start by saying that I am probably the biggest tax hawk there is sitting on this dais. I don't want to spend a single penny of taxpayer dollar, not one penny, not $1, if I don't think that it benefits this community. But I would also suggest that it's expensive to keep history, and it's expensive to restore history. Jupiter felt it was important enough for them to do it. I think it's important enough for us to do it. We build $70,000 bathrooms all over the city, all of the time. And if we're talking about under $200,000 to have a great piece of the history of our community, well, I'd say then that's pennies compared to the amount of money. If you look at our capital improvement fund, we just spent over $200,000 on a parking lot. So we need to make sure that when we're talking, okay, we're talking $200, how much does the bathroom cost at the dog park? How much does the bathroom cost down at the riverfront? How much are we paying for the splash pad? You know, this is just a historical piece in our community, and it's expensive to restore history. But one of the things that we have going for us is that the state of Florida often gives sizable grants toward that restoration. Now, they're not going to give us a sizable grant to restore a building if we have two doors. But if we have this building out at our airport, and we've spent the money to get this building to our airport, and by the way, we spent the peanuts to get this building out to our airport, then the state of Florida is going to recognize that as goodwill in trying to restore the history of our community. We often sell ourselves as this great historical community. We spent millions of dollars on our riverfront. We're about to spend $1.5 million to fix some docks. So if we're talking about $50,000 to move an important piece of the city of Sebastian, if you go through many of the pictures of the books that talk about Indian River County and Sebastian, the picture of this building is in many of them. I have zero problem supporting getting this building back in Sebastian.
Anyone else wish to?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. I'm kind of caught between the desire to try to save the historical preservation of Sebastian and the fact that the building doesn't do any good if we can't make it operational, have it do something. If I see this information correctly, it looks to me like we're talking about $300,000 plus to convert that building into a usable entity. If we had some indication that someone was willing or able to get that grant, I would have no issue with, I don't think, with the $50,000 or so to get the building here with that indication. But I don't even know yet that the Historical Society is willing to champion this or not. They just came to us and said the building's being destroyed, go get it, kind of thing. And I don't know that there's a champion out there that would do that. But I wouldn't have any issue with spending the $50,000 if I knew that someone was going to champion rebuilding a building similar to what was done in Jupiter. That was a great public-private partnership, and even though the city spent $100,000, the building did get restored, and it's a nice historical monument, but there were private entities that took on that. With the time frame that comes about, I don't know, maybe, I don't know whether the Historical Society or anyone has given the city manager any input on whether they would be involved in this or not. But that's the scary part to me, is spending $50,000 and then find that nobody wants anything to do with the building, and the city is then stuck either destroying it themselves or spending $300,000 to convert it into something. That's the scary part to me. It doesn't seem like there's a real path there, that $50,000 will get us from a dead building to an active building. I just don't see that right now. And maybe there is somebody out there who's willing to do it. And maybe have we asked if there's a possibility of getting a 2-week extension on this time frame?
I did ask that. No. And as a matter of fact, I talked to Rebecca Grohall, who is the planning director in the city of Fort Pierce. I talked to her this morning about that, and everybody remembers Rebecca, and they would like to work with us, but the close date, I think, is February 1st, and it goes to a new, it's on City of Fort Pierce property right now. It goes to a new owner on the 1st of February. New owner wants it gone. So that's the issue. Just as an aside, Mr. Youngblood, the building mover person from Sanford, that he can get his vehicle in there, he can get his trailer in there, he can load it. As Mayor McPartland was talking about, the road is tore up and there's some issues down there as far as moving that building. He has insurance, which is the first question I asked him. Would the building be insured if council decides to do this? Answer, yes. So those things would, and eventually he would be able to get it out. He feels fairly certain he would be able to get the building out of there. So we would have a mover, it would be insured, and he feels certain that he would be able to get it up here in one piece.
I'll just make the final statement, and I don't want anyone, I understand the trepidation and the concern in doing something like this. But the very last thing I'll say is that if we spend the $50,000 to get it here, there's no guarantee that building's ever going to be something special. But if we don't spend the $50,000, it's guaranteed to not. So that's the thought that I would go forward with.
Well,
Just a reminder to council, and I think, Mr. Hill, you were on council with the snowshoe house. And we moved the snowshoe house from US 1 to the park, on Indian River Drive, or Riverview Park. And it sat there for 3 years, and then we demoed it. We spent, that little move, I think, cost us, what, $20,000? It was a sizable amount of money, just to get it from 1 mile. And with the permits to get FPL to come in, and traffic lights. The 50,000 is a guess because we don't know how much it takes, how much it will cost for FPL to lift the lines, the cities, the municipalities to raise the whatever needs to be raised to get it here. And we don't know, we don't have a commitment from the Historical Society, you know, as far as I'm gonna look out and ask you, you guys have any plan for some refurbishing money? Yeah, I know, and they're shaking their head no. And if we had something that we knew we could latch onto, then perhaps we would have some more justification. But right now, we'll be bringing a building up, 50,000, maybe more, get it up here, plant it, no guarantee of a grant, and no outside sources coming in. Now, didn't we just talk about managing our money and setting harder lines and giving direction? Here we are, before we even have our meeting about setting, and we're changing our budget for next year. That money has to come from somewhere. It's sad because we didn't have time. If we had more time, if we had 6 months, we could have been looking for the grants. We could have been come up with a better plan. It just got. Remember, folks, this was here and got moved down there. Now we want to move them back. It's just not making any sense to me. It's hard for me to justify doing it. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Ms. Kinchin?
I don't have a problem moving it up here if we have a specific location. Like Mr. Hill said, there are grants out there available, and the city needs to go after them for the renovations, and we have time. We're in the process of starting our next budget. We can budget for some of those renovations in our next budget year coming up. But I think keeping the historical value of that railroad station would be an economic excellent thing for us, because it used to sit right here on Main Street on the corner. I have a picture of it in my old office at City Hall. I think we should do it and put it somewhere where people can enjoy it once we get it refurbished.
All right, you got a motion in there?
Where would, if you do this, where would the funds come from?
Maybe CRA, if we put it in the CRA district. So I guess I get the stink eye from Ken, so I guess that's not possible. So I just initially write from reserves.
Okay, so it would be a reserve hit.
Yes, sir.
And we're talking about probably...
We haven't budgeted for it this year, obviously, so
yeah,
it'll come from reserves.
And we're probably talking about, with the permits, maybe 60,000 rough. Okay. All right.
All right, you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to pursue the acquisition of the old train station and have it moved out to the airport.
Second.
All right, anyone from the public wish to speak about the old train depot? Yes, sir.
My name is Thomas Haynes. I live at 6304 River Run here in Sebastian. I own several pieces of property, and I'm staying here. I'm not leaving. This town is going to be my home, and I really would like to see that train station come here. I have two lots, and I just found out about this about 2 hours ago. So it's kind of overwhelming to me. I've been thinking pretty fast how to turn it where it's got to make money. You can't do anything that doesn't pay for itself unless there's donations. I've got a couple ideas where we can get volunteers in a large way. I didn't know anything about grants, but I think it's our last effort to bring the train station here. I tried to pick it up when it was going the other way, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And that was back in 2008 or 9, I'm gonna guess. So I'm interested in it. I don't have an answer for you because I've only been thinking about it for 2 hours. The couple of the things that concern me is the permits. That's like an open, someone tells you, well, it's going to be 45,000 plus, and all of a sudden there's another 45,000. I've done enough of that. We can't afford that, so we need to know. So I'd appreciate it, an opportunity to see if I can, at least by Friday, come up with something that would turn it around and bring it to Sebastian. I have 2 lots sitting on Cleveland Street. I just purchased them. They're vacant. If I could see an end result where I could turn it around where it doesn't have to make a lot of money, I'm retired, but at least I'm not losing money, then I could work on it. To me, it's the original Sebastian train station. Kind of cool. And I'd probably make it into a gift shop if that's what I need to make it, pay for the paint, pay for everything that has to be done. We do have grants if that's the case, but I don't know about a museum. If, in my mind, I don't know how you'd bring in enough revenue to pay for personnel and lights and everything. So that's it.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Quick question for you. Am I understanding that you're offering your 2 lots to put it on if we give it to you? I'm trying to, I know you only had 2 hours to think about this,
Right.
but help me understand what you just said.
Well, I was going to do something else with the 2 lots, but when I found out this afternoon around 4 o'clock, then I ran home and I told my wife about it. And yeah, that's what I was trying to do. The address, the 2 lots are right behind Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
It doesn't have an address, so
That's that big, long strip back there, right? One of them's that big, long strip, yeah.
lot
Be a
6
great
and
place
7.
for it.
I'm sorry?
Said that would be a great place for it.
I own the old hardware. I fixed that up. I picked up used to be the Press Journal, which was a bank, and now it's the Portside Pub and Grill. I fixed that up.
I remember Squidley's.
And I bought the corner lot that had a Stiles gas station, cleaned that up. So I'm pretty proud of my properties, as you can see, so I think it's a good fit.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak about the old train depot? Yes, sir.
Ben Hawker, Sebastian. The mayor said that the building is 5% salvageable. It doesn't seem very practical at that time. Have we had our city engineer go out and evaluate this? I know it's a short period of time, but there's another way of looking at it. Somewhere in the city records, there might be the blueprints for the original train station. Now, I can purchase a new home for $200, fully fabricated. So you can also build a new old train station, I'll call it, if we've got the plans. This gentleman wants the building moved there, and he's going to put some form of shops, et cetera, in there. Well, that's my dime and your dime, putting that building there. I don't think that's a fairly good idea when we have other properties. But as you said, you went out, you saw a building that is in bad, deteriorated shape. We've only got a minimum amount of time. You don't even know if Florida Power and Light's going to jump through the hoop to give you 1 week service to get all this down from Fort Pierce back to here. I'd say making a replica might be a better aspect to keeping the community the way it was, providing we have the original plans. People do it all the time. I don't think we have to go for, as it was pointed out, almost over 300,000. We're not getting a train going to stop here. It's not in any respect to that, if we maybe put it on the property where it was, I believe it's city property, that's like Field of Dreams. Put a baseball field there and they'll come. I don't see that happening. I think we just ought to let this one drop by the wayside. Get a hold of the contractor who's ripping the building down. Get the doors from them, whatever can be, something. But I don't see a very feasible move of taking back the old train station. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public wish to speak about this matter? Again, that's my thoughts, is the building can be refabbed or picked from the plans. You're taking a building that's basically 95% useless. The contractor's gonna have to ban that building because the roof is gonna fly off if they come up US 1. And again, we don't know what Fort Pierce Utilities, Vero Beach Utilities, FPL is gonna charge us to bring this whole thing up. You know, I wish it was in better condition. I was knocking on the walls, and they were not solid. That's why I'm saying there's only 5% possibly of this building that could be revitalized. So it's ultimately gonna be all new again. If we wanna build a replica, I think that's the best way to do it. Anyone else? No?
Just real quick, because this gentleman is very interested in that. I agree with the mayor. I see it as pretty big liability trying to get it here. But if we don't approve this, there's nothing saying that you couldn't go negotiate and go get the pieces. Bring it up here piece by piece, what you can salvage that's good, and go with your plan. Put it on that it would look good down there. You have a good property. But I don't see how we're going to get it up here in one piece when you look at the damage to it. And it left here. It's already made this trip one time in bad condition, and now we're trying to bring it back in bad condition. Okay, that's all I have.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Griffin, if, I'm trying to work through, I mean, my big concern was, let's keep the history, but just don't commit ourselves to $300,000, okay? What would be the issue for you if we were to ask you to meet with this gentleman and talk about whether the city can move it, and then it becomes his problem from that time forward?
Well, I think you have some issues there. You're probably gonna go out under your own ordinances to a bid situation or an RFP where you ask the general public for their ideas. Because you can't just take city property and give it to somebody.
Right. Okay.
But we can. I mean, you'd need to, I'm not sure how you would do it, because you would pretty much need to declare it surplus from your point of view at that point, which is a little bit inconsistent with what you're discussing now in terms of the historical importance of the city itself. But we might be able to work through that. But I think you're looking for some kind of competitive process to put it on, end up on someone else, a private piece of property.
Unless the gentleman negotiated with the Steam Locomotive Association on his own, and then we gratuitously paid to have it moved here. Just a suggestion. We would not have ownership of it if he worked it out with the Steam Locomotive Association, but we could...
Could I just jump in here right now? I think that the problem that we face is this last-minute situation where all of the things we're talking about right here are going to take forever. There's absolutely no way that the city of Sebastian is going to allow that train depot station to be placed on a private property right now without going through the permitting process, without going through P&Z, without going through all of the things that take months and months to do. So, my motion is simple. It's as it stands. It's just bring the building up here, put it at the airport, and we can figure out what to do with it then. That's all. And I understand the concerns. I don't have any problems with those who are concerned with it. I simply feel it's worth it. If there's others that don't, I get it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, well, we got a motion and a second. I hate to say it would be a boondoggle to bring it here, but I'll just leave it at that. So, roll call, Ms. Williams.
Vice Mayor Coy,
No.
Mr. Dodd,
No.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Kitchen,
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin.
No.
Motion fails, 3-2.
Get on the phone to Fort Pierce, get on the phone and call them down there. Get every piece of that you can.
All right, it leads us up to item 10B, consider planning and zoning's recommendation on medical marijuana dispensaries. Mr. Ginsburg.
Yes, sir. Last November, this board considered the issue and following, I guess, my recommendation, asked the Planning and Zoning Commission to make a recommendation back to you with regard to medical marijuana dispensaries. They met their last meeting. They decided to go for the conditional use option. But they didn't want to go any further than that because they didn't want to spend a great deal of effort working through a proposed ordinance if council disagreed with them at the front end. So if you're in agreement that you'd rather have an ordinance dealing with a conditional use as opposed to a special use that keeps it just open and applying any conditions at the time of any application, if you're in line or with the Planning and Zoning Commission, then we would work with them and develop an ordinance to bring back for your consideration. We asked them at their last meeting if they wanted to discuss the various zoning districts, which ones would be appropriate, what conditions might apply. They didn't want to get into that at that time. They had a discussion. They voted conditional use. They're asking you whether you agree with them.
All right, well, they sound good to me. I make a motion to send it back to them under conditional use.
I have a question for the city attorney, real quick. The county's ordinance, they have an ordinance, right?
Yes.
We can't just allow that ordinance to sort of be the law of Sebastian as well?
Yes, you can.
So their ordinance would already cover us, which would not allow for any dispensaries
Right.
in
The real question is whether or not you want to deal with that. The difficulty there is the county is quite restrictive.
Sure.
And you're dealing with industrial locations, specific ones. There are a number of interesting ramifications from that. We don't even have, I was just talking with the clerk this afternoon, there's a registry of the doctors that are available that have gone through the course. Correct me if I'm wrong. There aren't any doctors in Indian River County. There's one in Broward and Brevard. It's a unusual, so a person with ALS, say, in Sebastian, would need to, the nearest doctor, oh no, not in Brevard, it's up in, is it the Orlando area? I'm sorry, that's right, India Atlantic. So a person with ALS, or very serious medical condition, certain cancers, the like, would have to go to that doctor, get the prescription, go through the process for getting the prescription in the Atlantic. And then, if we let the county's ordinance apply to us, end up in some industrial area in Indian River County, another miles from us, you know, to fill the prescription. I mean, I leave it with you. I don't know. This is not an easy issue.
So if I could, then the question is special use versus conditional use.
Yes.
Okay, what's the difference and why would one be better than the other?
Okay. One provides a certain provides information to a potential user or person who's going to own and operate a dispensary. They know what district they would have to be in. Certain districts would be beyond the pale, others would be available to them, and they would know what the restrictions are. So many feet from the nearest residential area, so many feet from a school or whatever. In a special use situation, they'd come in, they wouldn't have those kinds of restrictions, but they wouldn't really know what they were dealing with until they got to the city with their application. And then the city would take a look at where their application was and make appropriate format appropriate conditions at that time when they could be open. You know, what the site would look like in terms of parking, minimum parking, and a million other things we might look at for something like that. That's basically it. If you want to go through an ordinance, there's a fairly complex mechanism for getting an ordinance like that in place. It requires more than one public hearing. It requires a number of standards under state law. But you'd have the benefit of an ordinance at the end of it. The other way, we can live with it as well. So from staff point of view, I think the staff is fairly neutral on this, because we're dealing with, we'd have to think of the conditions in advance, or we'll work on it on a case-by-case basis.
I'm sorry, so the mayor's motion is to go forward with the conditional use, to add conditional use in the land development codes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, the conditional use, basically, I prefer that. I'll second the motion if it hasn't already been seconded.
I did, I already seconded.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The conditional use, I think, is the better route because it specifically delineates what the rules are. So before anybody comes to Sebastian and asks to open a dispensary, they know what rules they have to follow.
That's right.
They also know what zoning areas that conditional use is approved for.
That's right.
I think a special use has an opportunity to be litigated more, doesn't it, than a special use? If someone's not happy with the results that the city gives them on a special use request, they're more likely to go after that if they've got deep pockets.
Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't know. So,
yeah,
for that reason, I'm in favor of the conditional use approach. I think the plain zoning can identify what zoning areas that conditional use is approved in and then come up with the appropriate conditional statements.
Please don't let, and I've said this many times, mostly to the county commission and Dade, not to you, but please don't let the possibility of litigation influence your decision.
Okay.
We'll take care of the litigation.
All right, well, we got a motion and a second. Anyone from the public wish to speak on the medical marijuana dispensary regulations? Any further council discussion?
Yes, just a couple comments. It was my understanding that when the county did their rules, they went at it with a particularly, I'm going to be careful how I word this, they're already all mad at me anyway over there, so. The harsh standing and very, very, very limiting where they put it. And I want to clarify, one, this is for medical marijuana dispensary. Medical marijuana. We're not talking recreational use. If there was to be a recreational dispensary, we'd be doing this all over again. It's medical marijuana. Is that a true statement?
Yes, and it doesn't involve smoking. There's no tobacco.
Yeah, somebody said that the other day, so there's...
They're pills.
It's only in Florida, it's only pill and salve type stuff? Well, if it works, it works. That's, the goal is,
Yes.
I just didn't know that. That's okay. Okay, so it's medical. And I'm just going over this to try to allay some fears out there because there are some people who are just in fear of marijuana, anything. This is very, very specific, and I'm sad that the county took such a harsh view. There are people who really, 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 I mean, I've gotten phone calls from some people that are saying, when is it happening? When are we going to get some? And right now, nothing is happening in Indian River County because the county made it impossible. And I'm saddened because for some people, it's their lifeline. It means some pain relief. So I just wanted to say that to allay some fears. We're not talking about, don't go buying your hookah because we're not talking recreational stuff. We're talking medical. So I'm all in favor of the conditional use, and I'm hoping P&Z looks at it with a very rational, fair eye. I'm sure they will. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Any other comments? No? Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, it brings...
Thank you for that information. I'll bring that back to P&Z at their next meeting.
All right.
And maybe we'll even have a proposed, a rough draft of an ordinance for them to
All
look
right.
at.
Thank you, Mr. Ginsburg. This time it's public input. Anyone who wishes to speak on something not already on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Ben Hocker, Sebastian. Just a comment on our event which we had recently in the park. And I've been in Parks and Rec. I keep bringing this up. And now you're talking, there was a potential possibility of putting a train station on airport property or a golf course property. And the Art and Music Festival, yes, it's great, but we lined every swale in our city down Indian River Drive with cars, diagonally parked. City has an ordinance, no parking in the swales. This went from the park in both directions, everywhere possible. I'll repeat it again. If we put like a fairground structure, a couple beams, an overhead cover, we've got a massive area at the airport. You'd never look at a parking problem. They didn't have to pave it over at the fairgrounds. Drive on grass, park your car. And other organizations can get the event. But we're just paying to have our parks cleaned, the swales maintained through private contractors at the moment, and here we are abusing it in that form. It doesn't seem logical. The city is tied up in a knot with signs as you're driving up. Slow down, there's traffic problems ahead on both ends of our city. Panhandlers were in the center aisle coming up there. It was a lengthy transition. Why aren't we not really looking at? The art club uses the front near 1. The craft club uses the front of the park near 1. There's only one event that does the waterfront, and that's the Art and Music Festival. And this time they only went from Indian River Drive with a few booths going on, 512. And also we shut off 512. You couldn't get into the gas station unless you made the right-hand turn, turned into the gas station. That's never been shut before. I'm surprised the gas station didn't say, hey, I got a problem here. Please consider the airport and the golf course. We're renting property from the airport to build a building for a contractor who maintains the golf course. I don't see any intrusion to the airport property by putting that up. Just one simple little structure, and we've got plenty of room out there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Hi, Andrea Ring, 407 Quarry Lane. I am the chair of the Natural Resource Board, and I just want to invite the public to our next meeting. We are having a guest speaker, and it will be televised, just the presentation part. So if you'd like to meet this gentleman, he is Dr. Jacoby, and he is an Indian River Lagoon specialist. So if you have questions and would like to talk to this person, please come to our meeting, which is February 7th, Tuesday. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Council. Jim Sunnycab, Sebastian.
Good evening.
Going to Easy Street Park tonight. Monday of this week, there was a blue light installed on our fountain at Easy Street. And this, the blue light supports a couple of things. Autism awareness, and also to honor officers who serve and protect us while remembering those who have died in the line of duty. The blue light also represents that. And this light is already being well received. My son Jake and I have a Easy Street Park on Facebook. It's dedicated to the Easy Street Park, the ducks in it, and anything going on in the park. We have a video of this light. So if you'd like to see the, it's not like the real thing, but it gives you an idea of what it looks like. But it's Easy Street Park on Facebook. But the light is already being well received from the people. Are like, I mean, it's a big plus for the park. And also on this dedicated Easy Street Park Facebook, we have 8 baby Egyptian geese, and you can see those on the Facebook site also. But it's and I'd like to thank Joel Griffin for getting this done. I think it's going to mean a lot for Sebastian, this blue light. Thanks.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Joe.
You got to remember that blue is also for child abuse prevention.
Is it?
You forgot that one, so yes.
We'll add it to Facebook.
All right, very good. Anyone else have any public input? All right, we'll close out that section. Leads us up into new business, item 12A, rebuild the public fishing piers and docks. Mr. Griffin, is this going to be Mr. Watanabe?
Well, this is mine to start. Everyone remembers Hurricane Matthew, and as a result, we suffered fairly severe damage to 5 of our piers and docks. Shortly thereafter, we started the bid review or bid process, publicly bid the rebuilding of these structures. The bid closed in January 10th, and the low bid was almost $1.4 million. A major concern for me is the possibility of when we rebuild these docks, have we mitigated enough that if we suffer another hurricane next year or the year after that or whenever, will we get FEMA reimbursement for reconstruction down the road? FEMA's standard is to rebuild after a disaster is that you have to rebuild to pre-disaster conditions. So with that in mind, we bid this out under those circumstances. As I said, the low bid on this is $1.4 million. Let's say, for example, that we go ahead with this and we get our piers and docks rebuilt. I'm worried about if we've planned on the stainless steel connectors and the right screws and all that other business, but have we mitigated enough, and will we be able to get reimbursement in the future? So I had a meeting with FEMA representatives and ran this by them, and I'd like council to consider this tonight, that we would make a secondary application to FEMA in response to our bid, that we would mitigate further by reducing some of our docks and piers, some of them that aren't used. And I'd like to start at attachment 2 in your packet, if you would, please. And the pier at Krabby Bill's is approximately 148 feet long, and I'm proposing cutting that in half to approximately 70 feet. That pier, that dock, was deemed by DEP not usable. No boats could tie up to that, so it's a sightseeing pier only. If you move further south on attachment 3, the first pier on the north side is the pier for the old Boudreaux property. Frankly, that pier has never been used since we bought that property. Actually, I've heard of some nefarious things going on down there, suggesting that we demo that entire pier and get rid of it. Moving further south, the Main Street Pier, that 380-foot dock, dock and pier that did get significant damage during the storm, 380 feet. I'm suggesting we reduce that by about half. And also down at the Yacht Club Pier, same thing there, that 370-foot pier, that we would cut that about in half. What I think this would do for us would be, and we could put these piers back if we ever wanted to in the future, by the way, but if we ever had the need. But what it would do would be to say to FEMA that we have mitigated to a great extent the possibility of something in the future happening to these piers, and we would be in a better position to get reimbursed. Another thing, our exposure on this is about $175,000 if we go with that low bid. I'm still worried about that. We are going to have to put out initially around $1.4 million if we go with this initial plan that we have, and with other expenses that we have with Hurricane Matthew cleanup, our exposure there is going to be almost $2 million. Now, I just want to make sure that we are in a good position to get reimbursed from FEMA, and I think this would put us in a much better stead with them to get reimbursement.
All right, well, I understand the whole mitigation portion, you know, because if we build them the way they are right now, and something happens again next year, FEMA's not going to give you the same money, and then we're on the hook for the whole $1.5 million. So, and I guess originally when we talked, there was discussion if we had cut the piers in half or eliminated a pier, we could not go back and do that pier again. You'd have to go through all the proper permitting and everything along those lines. Is that?
To answer your question, again, Frank Watanabe, city engineer. I've had several discussions with the Army Corps regarding the piers. When we started the project, my first contact was Army Corps because we will need their permit. They said at the time there will be permits required for these piers. The good news is, as long as you maintain each of these permits, as we plan to do so with the project, and we maintain whatever submerged land leases we have, you could not rebuild a pier and it still shows up in their book as a pier. So anytime in the future, you could put it back. She said that's not a problem with that. In addition to the good news, as the city manager was talking about, if you bring back the piers with a square footage less than 1,000 square feet, you can go under the general permit, which is a very easy task to do. So you don't have to go through several hoops of permitting. You could get a general permit, you piggyback off of the general permit. That may take even a quicker period. Again, reducing the risk and reducing the liabilities. So there's a lot of advantages, as the city manager was talking about, to reduce the piers.
Forgive me, I'm missing something in here, and I've read it a couple times, and I'm just missing it, I see. What is the total cost if we reduce the piers versus the cost versus rebuilding them?
I don't have the cost of the demo or the cost of rebuilding the piers, for example, demoing the Boudreaux Pier, or only rebuilding half of the Main Street Pier. I don't have those costs yet. I do have, obviously, the costs of if we go ahead and repair as they are right now. And that's
I mean, my
1.4
guess
million.
is, my guess is, and I would certainly agree with abandoning the pier at the, what is that, at the Main Street, abandoning that north pier. I would fully understand that. And there's really not a lot of use on busy days. The one at Main Street gets used quite a lot with extra boats being tied up all the way down. But I would anticipate and guess that a lot of the expenses of this construction is in the demolition. What's the condition of the pilings?
For example, the pilings at the long Main Street pier, the southern pier at Main Street, those are concrete pilings. Some of them towards the end are in bad shape. The pilings of the Bedreau pier, they're wood. They're just.
I think we don't have enough information to really make any decision on this. I think that the direction from this council should be to let us know what the cost would be to do it the other way. And then we could actually have a clear understanding as to where we are, because, I mean, if we're saving $100,000 on a $1.4 million project, but taking 2/3 of our dockage out, then I'm not so sure that would be a good idea. So my recommendation would be to make a motion to direct the city manager to go out and get the numbers for the repairs based on his recommendation.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this? Any further council discussion? Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Brings us up to item 12B, approve the RFP process for Sebastian Municipal Golf Course Restaurant Bar and Lease. Mr. Griffin?
Yes, sir. The Sebastian Municipal Golf Course Restaurant Bar lease, concession lease, is coming up for expiration in November of 2017. In November of this year, we started constructing an RFP to put out so we can get that process started for bid. As we got closer to that release date of January 15th, there was some correspondence that went back and forth between the current lessee, and also there had been some public discussion and FaceTime entries and things like that. I thought it would be a good idea to get this on the agenda for council discussion to see if council agrees with us proceeding with this RFP. It is out on the street. It was published on January 15th, but I'd like further council approval to continue this RFP process.
I fully support this. I make a motion to put the RFP out on the street.
I'll second that.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Any further council discussion?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
I'm very, very disappointed in the way this thing has been handled, and I have a lot of questions about how this thing has actually gone down. You know, in reading the contract that we have had with the owner of the Eagle's Nest, they signed a contract in 1997 for 20 years with 2 options of 10 years. Now, they have fulfilled every single thing in the contract that they signed and that they have been asked to do at the Eagle's Nest. In fact, they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make repairs on that facility, to make improvements, in fact. In fact, they have expanded our facility by over 100 seats. Originally, when they took over, it was about 40, a little tiny 40-seat snack shack. And and an RFP went out from the city, and they're the only ones that ultimately provided a proposal, and so the city accepted it. And they have for 26 years now been in that building, continually doing what we've asked them to do, being good stewards, being good tenants of our facility. Their doing everything they've been asked to do, and they've got $100,000 in debt still on this building that they built for us. I just can't for the life of me understand why we would take someone who we signed a contract with that has 2 renewals in it. Certainly they're not automatic, but when you have a renewal means something. And if your tenant has decided that, or has done everything you've asked them to do, then why in the heck would you throw them out on the street? And to ask for an RFP is essentially what we're doing. We're throwing these people out on the street after 26 years in that building. Now, they have provided us with plenty of documentation that says they're willing to work with us, they're willing to make adjustments to the lease to better match market value, they're willing to continue to make improvements to this building, they're willing to run the business the way we want them to run it. Now, I'm hearing a lot of things about, we talked to them last year about, give us a proposal. We talked to them later about give us a proposal. But if you read their contract, it clearly states, and part of what it states was listed in the backup. But it clearly states that the terms of the agreement is for 20 years, commencing on November 20th of 1997. And then as it states in the documentation that we have, it states that so long as the concessionaire is not in default of any condition, covenant, provided herein, concessionaire shall have the option to renew this agreement for 2 additional 10-year terms, provided the city within the sole discretion of the city thereof. Understood. But if you continue that, if you just continue just a little bit further, it states that written notice of the concessionaire's decision to request renewal of this agreement shall be delivered to the city no later than 180 days prior to the expiration of. The 180 days prior to the expiration of is May 20th of this year. So they're contractually obligated to let us know they want to stay in, and they have up till May 20th of this year to do that. They let us know back in December. They let us know back in December, prior to the RFP going out, that they wanted to stay there and that they wanted to work with us, and they were willing to adjust their lease rate. They're willing to make improvements to this building. I'm kind of shocked that council, that there are some, and I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but that would gamble taxpayer dollars on a restaurant in the city of Sebastian. This restaurant's been open for 26 years. How many restaurants are open for 26 years in the city of Sebastian? Or, better yet, how many open and close within the first 2 years? I can name dozens and dozens and dozens of restaurants that have done that. We're holding in our hands a guaranteed win. We're holding in our hands a royal flush. We're not gambling on this business. They're a 26-year business. Why, then, would we take that and chance taxpayer dollars on someone coming in and trying something else? Now, they're willing to do whatever we ask of them. Maybe not everything, but that's what good faith negotiations are. You go through good faith negotiations to get to a point where a good tenant who's been in there for 26 years and willing to work with us going forward wants to sign a 10-year extension that's written into their lease. They want to sign that. They want to go into negotiations with us to sign that. They're willing to, if you look at the RFP, they're already basically doing most of that, and I've heard no objections to anything in the RFP. So, this is either, well, I don't want to make any assumptions. It doesn't seem humane to me to take a business who we have signed an agreement with for 20 years with 2 extensions and throw them out on the streets when they've been good stewards and they're willing to do everything we've asked. I just can't understand how anyone could think that way. 26 years in business, spent over $200,000 on improvements to that facility, fully fulfilled all of the requirements of the lease, and they're still willing to do more. And all of those requirements of the lease that we asked of them, they're still $100,000 in debt on. They've improved the facility to actually allow it to where we can have a golf tournament out there. We can have a golf tournament, and the tournament can go in and have the, whatever it is, the after party or the results of the tournament given. They did that. We didn't. We, as a city, decided we weren't going to expand it because we couldn't afford it. So we talked them into it. And now we're going to throw them out on the streets. They've shown a willingness to adjust the lease and have good faith negotiations going forward. The city of Sebastian has, just like they have, up until May 20th, to tell them we don't want them in this facility. So why in the world are we going forward with this process? It makes absolutely no sense to me. It's, again, it seems to be inhumane. If someone could tell me what this tenant has done that has not been fulfilled the obligations they have in the lease, and that would take it up to the point of where we should determine that we're going to take a chance on another business, then I would have a discussion on this. But otherwise, I am shocked that we're even having this.
Mr. Griffin, what's the rent?
The rent started at about $1,300 a month. There's been some CPI increases over 20 years. It's about $1,425 a month.
Okay, and we pay the electric on that bill?
We pay all the utilities.
What's the electric rent a month?
$1,500. It's been $1,500 on some months. I ran the numbers for the past 6 months.
Okay.
Expenses and revenues.
So it's like we're subsidizing the whole thing?
Well, I ran the numbers for 6 months, and it was about our revenue to the city or the golf course was around $13,143 or something like that, and our expenses were $12,400 plus. So.
Okay, and I think one of the reasons that the business is so successful is because of the golf course that is there. How many rounds of golf are played a year?
Last year was down because of, I know you don't want this explanation, but I did ask this question to Greg a couple weeks ago, and the rounds were down last year because of the irrigation system installation and the bad rains last January. So they were around 43,000, but the year before it was almost 49,000.
49,000. So this, you know, I would argue that a restaurant is successful is because the city has brought in 43,000 or 49,000 people through their doors. All the restaurants that open up on the riverfront, they don't have 49,000 people that are walking through their doors. I mean, I look at the things and I try and figure out numbers just simply in my head. A lot of times I'm wrong. But I would think that we should be receiving rent at least $1 for each round of golf that is played.
Well, I mean, we're under a concession lease right now until November 20th. And I don't think the RFP is not inhumane. We do this all the time with public spaces and public buildings. That's what we do. We RFP things.
And have we fulfilled the first 20-year obligation of this agreement?
We will on November 20th.
On November 20th.
Yes, sir.
So we would be doing our due diligence by, we requested information last year, we got nothing, and we went forward with the RFP.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's all I have.
Actually, we did get something in December of last year.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
And we got a letter from them in December of last year where they agreed to negotiate with us, raise their rent, pay the electric, and make future improvements. How much more do you want them to do?
We were already in the RFP process just prior to bringing that out, and they delivered that letter.
The May 20th date that Councilmember Hill just mentioned, Mr. Ginsburg, is that that's a condition of the current lease that they have until May the 20th?
Yes. Notice as to whether they're looking for the option, they're going to exercise the option, has to be delivered 6 months in advance, or 180 days in advance.
Okay, so May the 20th,
Yes,
basically.
because November 20th is the termination date of this.
So if we do anything prior to May the 20th, and I guess I'm trying to understand legalities here, and the legal timeframes. In their current lease, they have until May the 20th to notify us if they want to extend.
Yes.
They want to accept the 10-year extension. The next question is, if they do want to accept the 10-year extension, does that allow us to renegotiate the lease?
Yeah, the terms can be renegotiated for the next 10-year period.
Okay, all right. I mean, I seconded the motion because my feeling is that it's a sweetheart deal, and I'm not trying to kick anybody out after 26 years, and I'm not thinking that we just need to replace them because we need to replace them. I think it's a sweetheart deal. I mean, my daughter's in this business, and there's absolutely no way in the world the people that she leases her space from would replace her walk-in cooler. That's not going to happen. If it breaks, she's got to fix it. If the lights go out, she's got to pay to have them fixed. She pays all the utilities. That's standard in the restaurant business to do that. And we're not asking them to do that, and I think we should. But if they have a legal opportunity between now and May the 20th to negotiate the lease, and I wasn't aware of that until Mr. Hill just brought it up. I mean, in any discussion I've had with the city manager, I didn't, and I honestly have to plead stupidity because I didn't read it well enough to find it. But if they have an opportunity until May the 20th to notify the city, and they do that and properly renegotiate the lease, then I think we should have an opportunity to provide them that time frame. Is that not consistent with, I'm just asking from a legal perspective, is that not something that we should do rather than try to break it in that earlier process?
Okay, first of all,
Nobody's breaking anything.
we're not breaking anything.
You know, understand that.
Okay.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry I used
that's
that
very
word.
important from a legal standpoint.
Yes, I understand
All
that.
of us, they and we, were working within the terms of the existing contract that we have. The problem is timing. The reason the manager went forward when he did is because he wants to look and review a number of potential proposals in time to see whether or not what we want to do. And I say that because they've got the right to give us notice that they wish to proceed for an additional 10 years. And as fairly stated by Councilman Hill, we have the ultimate decision.
Okay.
So the manager wanted to make sure that the council had the opportunity to make that decision and give everybody plenty of notice prior to November 20th so that we'd be in a position to make that decision.
Okay, so people who receive the RFP and decide to respond, are they aware in the RFP process that the current leasor, if I'm saying that correctly,
Concessionaire.
Can basically choose to extend the lease, and the city, if the conditions are correct, will go with that?
I'm going to say yes. And only because
There's nothing in the RFP that says that.
excuse me, only because that document is available to them.
Okay.
Now,
So-
whether they read it,
So moving forward with the RFP process does not stop us from negotiating with the current renter and with coming up with an amenable solution and an extension to their lease, or a replacement for their lease.
I think it's clear that the existing operator can respond to the RFP.
Okay. But if they decide on May the 20th, and I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, no, that's
If
not
I
what I
can-
understood.
No.
Yeah, and so let's say we get 4 responses to the RFP, they become public, and we receive those 4 responses in March the 35th or something like that. Or since that's not a good date, we'll use it. And all of a sudden then, on May the 15th, the current leaser comes in and says, here's my proposal, and they've modified their RFP response to match items that are in other RFP responses, are we in trouble for doing that? I mean, are we providing them? I'm just trying to understand whether we could get ourselves in the middle of something, or should we negotiate with them first and then do the RFP?
And then what happens? You can be in exactly the same.
Yes, I
I have
understand
a question.
that. I understand that.
You're
That's
not gonna be better
yeah.
off.
But
And I have to apologize, because in my discussions with the city manager on this, I wasn't aware of the May the 20th, and I'm not opposed to the RFP response, but I am thinking that if we have a contractual obligation with a party, that we should live up to that contractual obligation, and if they have until May the 20th, then we should be willing to accept the fact that they have that. If we go forward with the RFP response, that's fine with me, as long as it's not going to cause us to be in a pickle later because of the fact that we did that, so.
But it would, and here's the problem, and here's the real issue. If we go forward with the RFP process, and we open the RFPs, and we read the RFPs, that process is the process. We can't use those to renegotiate with the vendor that's currently in there. We cannot then say to the vendor, if you want to match this or beat this, go ahead. We cannot do that. The only way he becomes our lessee going forward, our lessor going forward, is if he's part of the RFP process, and that's not reasonable or fair. So we, in my opinion, need to negotiate with him and see if we could come up with something that's amenable to both sides first. And if we cannot do that, then we go forward with the RFP process.
The May 20th date, or whatever, in the contract, that still leaves 6 months to go out for RFP. If we cannot negotiate a very specific satisfactory lease with the current business owner in accordance with the terms of their contract, if it's something that we don't agree at council is, if we can't come to terms, why can we not then go out for the RFP?
On May 20th, we can tell them we do not want to we do not want to extend, and then start the process at that point. There's nothing stopping us from do that.
But in between now and May 20th, negotiations, if I remember right, what I read in the current packet, it's kind of a very general letter. Here's the letter from the concessionaire had a range. We're willing to spend this to this on that, and there was a range. I think we need to get down to more specific items. Here's what they're going to do, this is what we're going to do.
Maybe just at least respond to them and let them know what you think is not right in that, and that what you think would be more in line.
Right. Well, but let me just respond to just something you said, Mr. Hill, because if you get your calculator out, I'm not bright enough to do it in my head. I had to use my calculator, but $200,000 over 26 years is only $641 a month. So I mean that's a deal, and so to throw that term out there, it sounds wow, but when you spread it out over the time, it was a good deal, and they've been good concession. It's been a great concession. It's been something good for the city of Sebastian. So don't get me wrong. It's just, I think we need to get very specific, and instead of having just their letter, originally I was all for the RFP, but and let everybody compete on the same basis. But I think we do, the May 20th deadline by their contract, I think we do need to go back and give them the opportunity to give us specifics, bring it back, negotiate to the bottom line, your best deal, bring it to us, and let us look at specific contract, and give them the first option. And then send out the RFP, if we can't agree.
All right, I think we need to determine the fair market value for the restaurant, and maybe we need a good appraisal on the restaurant.
I've done that.
But you've done that, and you got the official one?
Yes, sir.
And that kind of exceeded what I had in my head, about $1 a round, didn't it?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. So what did that number come in at?
$20 a square foot.
Which is what a month?
3,600 square feet, $72,000 a year, divided by 12, $6,000.
Yeah, is that for a golf course? Is that for a golf course snack bar, or is that for a restaurant?
It's a restaurant, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it is a restaurant out there.
Okay. So you have that number in your head. Okay, then go forward.
Okay, I see Mr. Gardner in the audience. Have there been any complaints about the restaurant, Greg?
Has there been any complaints?
Yes.
Of course. But I will say, just listening to Golf Shop Talk, we hear complaints about every restaurant in the city at times. We hear good things and we hear bad things about all restaurants. So, but yes, I have heard complaints.
There's always room for improvement for everything. And I think to be fair, I think we really need to be fair to the current concessionaire and let them negotiate their very best deal and come back to us. Because I cannot look at the current letter, what was sent to us, and use that guideline. That's not fair. Because if I use that, I would say no. I don't think it's a good deal. But I think that they should be given a second opportunity to get specific, talk to you about the appraisal value, and come back, and use it and put a deal down. Here's what it is. Give it to us at council so that we know. And we say yay or nay. If it doesn't meet our expectations, boom, out goes the RFP. That to me would be fair.
You think you know where you're going with this, Mr. Griffin? You think you know where you're going with this? You got your driving
I
thing?
do want to say one more thing.
Okay.
Just because of something I heard today. My daughter is in this business in Asheville, North Carolina, not in Sebastian, Florida, and has no intention to run a restaurant in the golf course. Okay.
Well, there's a motion and a second.
All right, well, let's take a vote on the motion in the second.
What's the motion again,
It was
please?
to go forward with the RFP now.
It's withdrawn, though.
You would,
Did you withdraw it, or are we going forward?
you want to withdraw the second?
Oh, yes.
Withdraw the
Yeah,
motion.
it was, I did second that motion, yes.
So you withdraw?
Your motion was to go forward.
You withdraw?
No, I do not withdraw.
You want to vote on this motion?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
All
yes.
right, I'll withdraw.
You'll withdraw your motion?
Withdrawn?
I'll withdraw.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, you know where you're going with this, right, Mr. Griffin? Okay.
Ooh.
Mr. Ginsburg, you have anything for us today?
No,
Love
nothing.
your lawyer?
Pardon? Nothing tonight. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Griffin?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Ms. Williams? Councilmember Kinchin?
No, I have not. Oh, I do have something. Mr. Watanabe, are you still here?
Yep.
Sorry, I caught ya. I happened to see that the crews were doing work on the street next to Mel Fisher's Museum. Does that mean negotiations with the FDOT fell through?
Jefferson Street, you're talking about, yes.
Right.
It's the ongoing project that we have. We have a sinkhole that was identified about 6 months ago. We have a hole. And a lot of the issue is because there's a drainage pipe that goes from US 1 to the lagoon. That drainage pipe is within our roadway, however, it's an FDOT pipe. Based on our early reviews out there, both with us and with FDOT, we can't figure out what's causing the problem. We believe it's probably a natural spring. So today we had, after FDOT's done all they can, we brought out our equipment and we excavated the area to determine what's causing the problem. And we still have not determined what's causing the problem. FDOT has some technicians that are going to give us some reports. But right now, we just don't know what's causing the problem. There is no hazard right now. The hole hasn't gotten any bigger. The properties are sound. It's within our roadway right-of-way, but we still need to fix it. And so in cooperation with FDOT, we're trying to figure out what's the best approach to resolve this problem.
Okay. I was just hoping they would rip up the road and not us.
All right, anything further? No? I have nothing tonight. Vice Mayor Coy?
Just real quickly, I don't know, it's that time of the year with we get a lot of people coming down from the north. And I've noticed this year, and I don't know why, but it's just been noticeable that we there have been more persons with mental challenges out and about in public. And when I say mental challenges, you know, they have serious, either an illness or there's something wrong. And so my only caution to people, I ran into, there was a guy at Publix up in the Roseland Road Publix. Yesterday we had a gentleman in the parking lot here. I mean, it was pretty eerie thing. And I just want to suggest to people that if you see something like that, don't try to take anything in your own hands. Call the police or the sheriff's department and let professionals deal with the issue, because I don't know why maybe they're attracted to me. I don't know, but I'm seeing more of it this year. And so just be careful. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Dunn.
One thing. Several years ago, we put planters on 512 at various intersections with palm trees and some landscape. It's in really bad condition. I think we should either fix it or remove it. I'm not opposed to removing it. Maybe remove the things and put sod back down and get out from under the requirement that we maintain those corners, because I believe we took over maintenance of those intersections from the county. I'd also wouldn't have an issue if we try to maintain that whole road, because they don't do a real good job on it. And I think that if we could figure out a way to get maintenance of 512 corridor within the city, we might be able to do a better job. I don't know. But we certainly don't need to be spending our time maintaining something that's not viable anymore, and it might be better if we just sod it over and try to turn that maintenance back over to the county. Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Mr. Hill?
Yeah, nothing further. Thank you.
All right, being none further, this meeting's in adjournment. Good night.